Welcome to our second installment of the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. I'm Zach Kaufman, here with my good friend, Ryan D'Amico.
What's up, Zach? How you doing, man?
Doing excellent. Ready to
Awesome.
get started here.
Yes, sir.
So last time we covered all 16 teams in the AFC. If you missed that, you can go check it out on iTunes. We got it uploaded on YouTube as well. A lot of good content in there. We had some good conversations back and forth. The only real significant thing that came up since that podcast that deals with the AFC was Anquan Boldin's retirement from the Buffalo Bills this year. What do you think about that, Dia?
I think it was his time. I mean, and his kind of reason for it was he's meant to do more on this earth than just play football, which, if you know anything about Anquan Boldin, I mean, he won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award a few years back. Very good humanitarian. I mean, just a really good guy. So it's not a surprise to me that he bowed out and can get on with his life now. But as far as Anquan Boldin, the player, I mean, this guy was fantastic. And I think not many people are aware of like how good he really was. I mean, he started his career with the Cardinals, who when he got drafted, they weren't anything special until they finally got to the Super Bowl in 2008. But I mean, the numbers that he was putting up, like as soon as he got into the year, Zach, or into his career, Zach, I mean, he had 101 receptions as a rookie. Like that's fantastic. So I just think of Anquan Boldin as like, first and foremost, just a good teammate and a good person. And then second off, the thing that comes to my mind is like, if I was a defensive back, linebacker, even a defensive lineman for that matter, he's not really someone I wanted to tackle. Like, he was like a baller, dude. Like, he would run you over and didn't care.
Yeah, definitely a big guy. He's 6'1", 220. He played for 14 years, really productive throughout his career with Arizona. He played a couple years for the Ravens, San Francisco, and then finished out last year with Detroit. So he's been playing since 2003. That's a long time to be a productive player. Multiple 100-catch seasons. Even one year we were talking about, he only played 14 games, didn't even play the full season. But statistically, that was his best year. 102 receptions, 1,398 yards, and then he also had 7 touchdowns on top of those monster stats. So huge respect to Anquan Boldin. Great career for that guy. And that was our biggest news there from the AFC, just his retirement. So we wanted to give a big shout out to him.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, and yeah, just to kind of go back to the AFC breakdown. I think with that being our first podcast, I think it went really well. I mean, like I told you when you just got here, we're doing this in my home right now. So I said as soon as you got it uploaded and everything, I actually sat down and listened to all 1 hour and 47 minutes of the podcast, which obviously went a little longer than we kind of expected. But I mean, all in all, I think it went really well. I think the sound quality was good. I think the content was good. Good, dialogue back and forth. So, look, guys, if you're out there and you listened last week, thank you. If you're just tuning in for the first one this week, welcome. And we think we're doing big things here and moving in the right direction. So keep hanging with us. And if you like it, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us and download us on iTunes. Like Jack said, we're up on iTunes now, which is a very big step, getting it on there. So, some good things happening around here. And, I'm excited to keep it going and talk a little NFC tonight, the conference that I think we both care more about.
And that's where the title of our podcast comes from, being lifelong rivals. I've been a Cowboys fan. Ryan's been an Eagles fan. So we'll actually save the NFC East for last and get into that. But we will be getting into breaking down each other's teams, having some good conversations about that, as well as all the other teams in the NFC. And we're going to jump right into the NFC North first. So I am going to start at the top with the Green Bay Packers. They always, with Aaron Rodgers, have a good team. He's a great player to build around. The other pieces kind of from year to year, I feel like a lot of them rotate in and out. They've had Jordy Nelson's been there for a long time. He's very solid. But I'm just very concerned at their running back position. I think Ty Montgomery's been solid, but I don't I don't expect him to really take that next step this year. I think a lot of people think he's going to be very good. That's one guy I'm a little bit down on. Another big offseason transaction, they brought in Martellus Bennett at tight end. So I'm excited about this team. They're going to be a fun offense once again. But I still see them as having some holes, even though I think they're at the top of the division.
Yeah, so do I. It's funny you say that because I think a lot of people, year after year, they just think Packers and they just kind of automatically just cement them as, automatically winning the NFC North. And I really don't think that's the case. I think actually they're going to be in a dogfight with another team in this division that we'll get to, and I'll make that known when we talk about them. But if you look back at last year, their defense last year was terrible. Really bad. And if they don't have Aaron Rodgers, a guy that can week in and week out score you into the 30s, who knows where this team could have been. But I don't think their defense really got that much better with some additions in the offseason and via the draft. So I still worry about that. And then obviously, just like everything else, you kind of have to dial into the schedule a little bit, and they do start off the season with 2 really tough games at home against Seattle, and then they have to go to Atlanta. Follow that with 2 back-to-back road games at Dallas and at Minnesota in October. That's a tough start to the year, first 2 months of the year. So I don't think they're going to put up their traditional 13-12 wins this season. I look at this team as 10-6. I think that's kind of where I have them at.
That's maybe what they were last year.
Yeah, I kind of think they're the same. Really, I don't see much with this team as far as getting light years better. While I do like the Martellus Bennett pickup, I really do. The running game obviously is a concern. How does Ty Montgomery hold up for 16 games? If he goes down, then where do you go? I know they brought in a rookie from.
They brought in 2 rookies. Jamal Williams is the first one.
Williams, yep.
And then Aaron Jones is the other.
Right.
So it's interesting. It makes me think of a couple years ago. It was actually, I was just looking this up. It was 2013. They brought in 2 running backs. One was Eddie Lacy. One was Jonathan Franklin. Yeah. And Franklin obviously didn't work out at all. Lacy became kind of solid. So it seems like a similar kind of swing they're taking. That they took both of those running backs this year, and they'll be the direct backups to Montgomery. So I feel like Williams could get a chance, but I'm still down on their running back position. But they have that core group: Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams was very impressive last year. Randall Cobb's still there. They're going to be good. They're going to be a good passing offense.
Right.
Martellus Bennett's there at tight end, although they don't really use the tight end that much. I don't have high hopes for him. I think he'll be solid, but not anything that'll really stand out.
And the thing, like I was pointing out with the schedule, this team has some really tough road games this year. I mentioned at Atlanta, they got to go to Dallas, to Minnesota, and then to Carolina, and to Pittsburgh. Those are some really serious, tough road games this season. So, I think they kind of just stay even keel and win about 10 games again this year.
I've got them about more like 9-7. I think it's going to be somewhat of an ugly battle towards the top of that division. That there's a bunch of teams right around 500. Well, not a bunch. No chance on the Bears there.
Sure.
But I think there's some teams right there towards the top that'll be battling it, specifically the Packers and Lions.
Is that where you want to go next?
Let's go to the Lions.
Okay.
That's who I definitely have up there as the team that's most competitive. Matthew Stafford, he's been good for quite a few years. He's coming back similar to Aaron Rodgers, where he's always there, he's always consistent, he's always productive. Obviously not on the same level. So that's where I give the Packers the edge. But again, question marks at running back. They have Amir Abdullah, hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he's shown good flashes. I like Theo Riddick as their receiving back. And then they have a couple other players behind that'll kind of get involved. I like their receivers, Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. A lot of people are high on Kenny Galladay. as their rookie receiver this year. I'm not sure how productive he'll be, even though he's had some big preseason games. I think it might be like that in the season, where he has some big games and then drops off others. And then Eric Ebron's their tight end. So they have some good offensive pieces to go off of. Their defense doesn't really excite me very much at all. So I see this team as very similar to the Packers, but just a step below them. I think they're going to be right around 8-8.
Yeah, that's kind of where I have the Lions as well. Not really high on Detroit this year. Look, Stafford did some nice things last year. Had probably his most efficient season of his career, actually. And that being said, he did it without Calvin Johnson. So there's rumors yesterday or 2 days ago going around that they might sign him and make him the highest paid player in all of football, which is pretty wild when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, you look at the rest of their offense, the running game I'm kind of worried about. Receivers they have a nice kind of trio there going on, but Ebron, he can't ever seem to stay healthy. And then defensively, I'm not really too in love with them. And at the end of the day, they are the Lions, and why they kind of excite people sometimes during the offseason and to start the year, they eventually figure out a way to screw it up. So, and another big loss, one of their tackles, Taylor Decker, young kid from, I want to say either Michigan State or Ohio State. I can't remember which one. Actually, I think it was Ohio State.
He's from Ohio State.
Yeah,
yep.
I was say I'm pretty sure it was Ohio State. He had off-season shoulder surgery, so he's going to miss some time. So that's really going to hurt. Stafford takes a beating enough as it is, so not too high on the Lions. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I'm actually going to lean more of like 7 and 9.
Okay.
I think they're actually going to finish with a losing record.
Interesting, because they were 9-7 last year.
They were. I think they take a step back.
Amir Abdullah missed a lot of time there.
Right.
So hopefully he gives them something. Regardless, I think they have solid pieces to be right around that 500.
Sure.
So I'm curious, what team are you saying is going to be competitive at the top of the division?
I like the Vikings, actually, dude.
Very fascinating.
I like the Vikings this year. If you remember, let's think back to last year. This was actually the last unbeaten team in the NFL last year before they rolled into Philly and got beaten by the Eagles to give them the first loss last year. And then kind of some things just kind of spiraled out of control. Couldn't get things under wraps there. More importantly, offensively, they kind of struggled a little bit as they kind of went into the middle and last half of the season. But the defense is good. I mean, the defense has been good for a while. It's really building into something right now. I mean, I really like what they have in all levels, defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. I really like what they tried out onto the field and
easily the best defense in the division.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes. I mean, the fact that they are the best defense in the division. I think that really says something, and you know, you got Sam Bradford there, who he has another year under his belt, a guy that, look, I'm not high on really at all, but I mean, this is a guy that has bounced around a lot and has been under different coordinators, head coaches.
Former Eagle for you,
right? Exactly, and you know, now he has another year under his belt, he has a full off season now to kind of, you know, build in with the receivers and whatnot, but. I actually am kind of looking forward to see what their running game is going to give them. I think Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook I think that gives them a nice little 1-2 punch. Murray was pretty effective at times in Oakland, kind of disappeared at some times, but from all reports out of camp, Dalvin Cook has looked fantastic. Didn't take the coaching staff long to name him the number one running back, so I think he's going to give them a lot. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb here. I actually think Minnesota is going to win the division. I think they're going to actually. I think they're going to be a surprise team in the NFC and take the division from the Packers. So I think they finished 10-6, which puts them one game ahead of the Packers. So I thought go 9-7.
I'm not quite that high on the Vikings. I do like some of the pieces, just like you were saying. I'm not sold on their receivers. They have a bunch of solid receivers, but it's not anything that really excites me as much. Stephon Diggs is fine. Adam Thielen's fine.
Yep.
Laquan Treadwell, high draft pick, didn't do anything last year. So I'm a little suspicious there. Kyle Rudolph is very solid. They go to him all the time in the end zone, so he's great for fantasy purposes. I know I've got him on both of my fantasy teams that I've already drafted here. So very, very quality tight end. It's just I'm excited to see what Dalvin Cook brings. I think that could be a big difference maker if he really starts off well and takes off. That could propel them to being 10-6 at the top of the division. I still see them closer to 8-8, maybe even 7-9. I just don't think they're quite there yet offensively. Although the defense is what stands out to me.
Right.
That's what would make the big difference. If they're consistently making plays as good as they were previously, they could definitely make a push for the top of this division. I just don't see it yet. So the only other team we haven't discussed yet within this division is going to be the Bears.
The Bears.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with this team. I just don't like them at all. They were 3-13 last year. They haven't really made improvements. They brought in 2 quarterbacks, which fascinates me at what will happen there. They signed Mike Glennon to a big contract and then brought in Mitch Trubisky as a high draft pick. And do you think he'll start this year?
Who?
Trubisky.
It's funny because we talk about these these rookie quarterbacks, and we always say is he going to start? Would you start him? Yes, I mean I would. I would have started him. I would start it from day one, but it's a shame because they went out and got Glennon, and they had Glennon before the draft.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, well, Trubisky fell to us, or they actually traded up to get him with the Niners, so they got their quote unquote franchise guy now going forward. So yeah, I mean I'd throw him out there right away. I mean this team is not going to be good. I mean Mike Glennon's not going to give you a whole lot, and Mike Glennon, by the way, probably one of the top 3 goofiest looking quarterbacks in all the league. He's a goofy looking guy. I've said it since he was with Tampa Bay.
I had to look it up. He does have like a long neck.
I remember when he was at NC State. He's a goofy looking guy, but and his play isn't much better. So yeah, I'd throw Trubisky out there, man. I really would.
It's a tough decision because if you do that, you're paying Mike Glennon
That's the thing.
$15 million to sit on the bench.
And that's why you have to look at the business aspect. And like you just said, I mean, we're paying this guy $15 million. We have to play him.
Yeah, that definitely makes the decision tough for him. But it's one thing I do like about it is I know as a Cowboys fan, we had way too many years where Tony Romo went down and it was a disaster. Like the Bears will be fine if something happens to either of these guys, that the other one's going to step in and be a solid quarterback. But they invested a lot to be in that situation. 3-year, $45 million deal for Mike Glennon, taking Mitch Trubisky, number 2 overall. That's a lot of investment in the quarterback position. Meanwhile, they pretty much ignored everywhere else.
They did.
They didn't really make improvements. They're coming back. Jordan Howard was very good last year. I think he'll be similar again. But their receivers, Cameron Meredith did some good things last year. I'm interested to see what he does. Kevin White was a high pick.
Yeah.
I have my doubts. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. I will believe it when I see it. Beyond that, they've got Kendall Wright and Marcus Wheaton fighting for that third receiver. I'm just not too excited about either of those guys. I like Kendall Wright a little bit more, but still, I feel like this is going to be a rough offense, especially early on.
A couple thoughts with the Bears. For me, for one, I hate the Mitchell Trubisky pick, for one. I was a big proponent of
the player or how high he got picked?
Yeah, just him. I don't think he's going to be that great of an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's a guy you take in the top 3 of the NFL draft. And look, I get that the quarterback class was weak this year coming out, so that played a big role in it. But I just don't think he's going to give you a whole lot at the quarterback position and be that guy going forward. So the fact that they traded up to get him, I wasn't really high on. I kind of quit. There are a lot of quarterback moves in this year's draft that I questioned, but so Trubisky I'm not really high on. So we'll kind of see what happens with the Bears. The unfortunate thing is they do have Jordan Howard. A lot of people high on him. He had a good year last year. One reason I wasn't high on him in fantasy is because you have to think that people are just going to load the box and be like, okay, let's stop Jordan Howard and we'll have your quarterbacks try to beat us. And I think that's going to be an issue. So look, I just think this Bears team's one of the worst teams in football this year. They might be the worst team in the NFC. I mean, one of.
I can't see. I can't see the.
I mean,
I still have the Rams way down there.
I mean, but so how many wins you give the Bears? I give them like 3, if that.
I think they'll be 4.
Okay.
I'm
gonna give
I
them
could
3.
see them winning 5, but I'm gonna give them 4. They're not horrible like some teams.
Okay.
There's a bunch of like decent. I think guys like Cameron Meredith, maybe Kevin White if he can stay healthy, they can be decent role players. They're just kind of like a Jordan Matthews, just in the wrong position that they don't belong as top receivers.
Right.
So I think they could be okay towards the end. I don't see him being significantly good. I just don't see him being at the very bottom of the NFC. So that's it for the NFC North. Yep. We're heading on to the NFC South next. I actually think that last year's division winner and the team that made it to the Super Bowl, the Atlanta Falcons, I think they're going to regress this year. I think they're going to drop down and not be nearly as good.
What did they finish last year in regular season?
They were 11-5 last year.
They were 11-5. Okay.
So 11-5, made it the whole way to the Super Bowl, ended up blowing that lead.
Yep.
They have a lot of their team coming back here. The running backs are incredible. It's the best pair of running backs in the NFL. I love what they've done there. They've still got Julio Jones, incredible player, as long as he stays healthy. I like Austin Hooper as their tight end. He's he's made some plays towards the end of the season. He seems to continue to grow every single year, and I think he'll take a big step forward as the number 1 tight end. They had a lot of Jacob Tammy last year, and I think someone else was in there as well. And then their defense is returning pretty well, it was a solid defense last year. So I think the biggest number 1 reason they dropped back is Matt Ryan. I think he played far out of what he normally does last year, and he's just going to come back to closer to what he's normally been, and that's going to lead them to being a little bit lower in the division. I actually have them as 3rd in the division this year.
Wow. Zach dropping a bomb. 3rd? Damn.
3rd.
Okay, I could kind of see them as 2nd because a few of the other teams in the division I'm not really high on long term, but yeah, I can't see him falling to
Matt. Let me give you some stats here.
No,
so,
dude, he was amazing. Dude, I had him in one of my fantasy leagues last year.
He was amazing.
Amazing.
He threw for almost 5,000 yards.
Correct.
He threw for 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But if you look at his stats in other years, 2012 was the only other time he threw above 30 touchdowns. I can't imagine he stays up there. 7 interceptions over the course of the season is incredible,
right?
But I doubt he'll keep that up. I think he's more consistently been like 14 to 17 interceptions throughout his career, and I think it'll go up, maybe not on the high end of 17, but I think it'll be around that like 12 to 14 range on interceptions. I think the yards come down a little bit, especially if something happens with Julio Jones, who's had injuries with him getting injured. So I think he takes a step back this year, and the whole team does as well. Kind of a Super Bowl hangover there.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, you know, teams that get to the Super Bowl, and even the teams that win it and the teams that lose it, I mean, historically, they kind of take a step back the next year. I mean, there's a reason, you know, no one's won back-to-back Super Bowls since the Patriots, you know, over a decade ago. So, I mean, that's not too surprising. I think they kind of stayed stagnant because, I mean, if they were like third, if they just had a fantastic regular season last year and rolled through the playoffs and got to the Super Bowl, had a big letdown, yeah, I could see them kind of taking a step back this year and, you know, taking it back to only like 11 wins. But I think they stick right around with 11 wins, maybe 10 if they take a step back. But I still think they're definitely going to be right there. You know, battling with to win the division. I mean, Vic Beasley, what he did last year, rookie out of Clemson, who actually led the league in sacks in his rookie year, which I'd love to know when the last time that happened, when a rookie led the league in sacks. I mean, that's fantastic. And I mean, you got to think he's only going to get better, and as they continue to try to improve the defense somewhat, which was an issue at times last year, most importantly in the Super Bowl when they couldn't stop Tom Brady and the Patriots one time. All they needed was one stop in the last quarter, and they win that game, and they couldn't do it. So, yeah, I think they kind of stay right around the same. I'm going to book this team for 11 wins. They do have kind of a difficult schedule. They have to play. They have to go to Foxborough and play the Patriots. They play the rest of the AFC East. They have another. They have to go to Seattle as well. So I mean, there's some tough spots in there, but I still think they're going to be. I still think they're going to be a good team. I don't agree with you. I think Matt Ryan takes a step back, but I still think he's. It's funny. We're going to learn a lot about the Falcons because I actually like this situation. I like to see how teams, players, coaches, how they respond to adversity.
I agree.
Let's see how
that's some huge adversity.
Let's see how this Falcons team bounces back after blowing a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. Let's see how this team bounces back, and let's find out what Matt Ryan's made of, what Julio Jones is made of, what Dan Quinn, their head coach, is made of. And another reason why you might be right is they lose their offensive coordinator in Kyle Shanahan. So he goes to coach San Francisco. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of interesting pieces with.
I've got them at 7-9.
Wow,
third place
in
the
losing
division.
record.
I do. I'm down. I think they definitely.
I mean, look, we might
drop off.
We might get together 8 months down the road, and you might be absolutely correct.
I might be a complete idiot.
You might be.
It'd be interesting to see.
This team might be in the Super Bowl again, but yeah, wow, 7 wins. Jeez,
I'd love to see them prove me wrong. They have some fun players on their team.
Look, we're gonna go through this schedule. You give me 9 losses, okay? At the Bears, that's a win.
Yeah.
Packers at home. That's a home game. I'd say they win that. At the Lions, I could see that as a loss. At home against the Bills, at home against the Dolphins, they're 2 wins. At the Patriots, loss, obviously. At the Jets, that's a win. At the Panthers, all right, loss. Home against the Cowboys, if that was at Dallas, okay, I'd give them a loss because Zeke will be back at that point. I'm still going to say win. At Seattle, loss. Home against Tampa, win. Home against the Vikings, win. Home against the Saints, win. And at the Buccaneers, I'll give them a loss there to end the season. I mean, I personally didn't come anywhere near 9 losses. I just don't see 9 losses in that schedule.
See, I have 7 I could definitely see.
Okay.
I have another 2 that could be possible, but might be a little
they still have to
stretch.
slip up in 2 more.
I agree. So these 7, I see them losing to the Patriots. I think they could lose to the Panthers. I think they can lose to the Cowboys, Seahawks. I think the Bucs could sweep them. The Bucs are a team I really like this year. Both of those games are towards the end of the season as well, so they'll have Doug Martin back.
And plus, Tampa's offense really could click inside on that fast track in Atlanta with all the speed and the playmakers they have.
Yeah, that's a team we'll get to, but that's a team.
I mean, they have a really tough stretch here. Starting October 22nd, they have to go to. They have 3 straight road games, to New England, at the Jets, okay. But then at the Panthers, come back home against the Cowboys, and at Seattle. They actually have a stretch where they play 4 of 5 on the road. So that might be where some snowball losses could come into place there for you. So
yeah, I see, especially towards the end of the season, they definitely have some tough games.
But I still think you're nuts. I'm trying to come over to your side here, kind of, to try to, make a case for 9 losses, but I just cannot see it, dude. I cannot see 9 losses.
It'll be fascinating to see, but that's how I have them. That's 7 and 9.
Fair enough. We all have our opinion. Yep.
So where would you prefer to go next, Saints or Bucks? Or Panthers? I'll give you the Panthers.
Let's do the Panthers. Let's do the Panthers.
We can start with the Panthers.
Yep. Because I think this is one of the more intriguing teams in football. I think this is definitely an intriguing team, considering they're only 2 years removed from a Super Bowl.
I agree. They have some good pieces. It's another team I'm down on. They were 6-10 last year. I really think they're going to be 6-10 once again.
Now you're on the right track.
I'm not that high on them. The pieces they gained, especially in the draft, are number one. I like both Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel.
They're like the same player.
They are, and it's types of players they haven't really used before.
Right.
It's something they'll have to work in. I don't think they're going to make a significant impact right away. I think McCaffrey will more so. He'll get more time on the field. But I still think they'll go back a lot to Jonathan Stewart. Their receivers just have not impressed me so far. I'm very down on Kelvin Benjamin. Very down on Devin Funchess. Don't even know who's going to be the third receiver. I don't really care. Ted Ginn's gone. He did well in that position, but I just don't see any of those names standing out. Greg Olsen, huge respect. That he's been around for a while. He's great every single year. I love Cam Newton, so much fun to watch, but I just see them being very similar to last year. I don't think they did a lot to really improve and make me have any reason to think they're going to be better.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more with your breakdown and your opinion there. I'm pretty much on the same wavelength. One, I'm actually not a big Cam Newton fan. If you could actually get Cam's stats up for me, that's kind of one thing I wanted to look at. The Super Bowl year he had 2 years ago, you want to talk about Matt Ryan taking a huge step? I mean, dude, his stats from his career, just if you just take out the year he went to the Super Bowl, where he put up like phenomenal numbers, rushing, passing, everything, the rest of his numbers are pretty shitty.
I agree. I have him up. I have him up right now, so
I mean,
easily.
Just say his touchdown interception ratios for his career.
So, for his career, we'll go through each year.
So
21 and 17, 21 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, then 19 and 12, 24 and 13, 18 and 12, 35 and 10.
And then he blows up.
19 and 14
and then last year.
He
comes back down to earth and says, "Okay, last year was a mirage. I'm coming." Look, you say you like Cam Newton. I've made this.
I like to watch him.
Okay.
He's a fascinating player to watch. He makes great plays. I do love that about him.
I've been on record, multiple platforms, multiple different podcasts and shows, and talking with my friends and different things. I hate Cam Newton. I really am not a big fan of him. Look, I'm the type of person that I like to show up to work, do my job, punch the clock, and go home. I'm not a big me guy. I've never been that way in my life. I'm not a very big showboater. He's kind of like that, so that's kind of part of the reason why I kind of shy away from him. And also, I just don't think he's very good. He had a fantastic year when they went to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to take that away from him.
One thing we didn't even bring up, 636 yards rushing that year and 10 touchdowns.
Right.
That's not very repeatable.
So
he did have 14 as a rookie,
he's
but
responsible for 45 touchdowns that year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like Madden numbers right there. So, and look, I just think he is what he is. I think Cam Newton's a 24 and 13. That year right there, somewhere around there, 24 and 13.
And that's what he did in
14.
2013.
I think that's kind of right around what he is. I think that's what he's going to be, the best he's going to be.
Although that would be better than last year.
Right.
Last year he was 19 touchdowns, 14
he'll
interceptions.
Maybe be a little bit better than last year. But yeah, and the defensive side of the ball. I mean, let's not even. I mean, everyone wants to talk about Luke Kuechly. Let's not forget this secondary is an absolute joke.
Yeah, since they lost Josh Norman, it's just,
again another move I just do not get. I mean, it's you have to look at this as a GM and say, okay, if we let Josh walk, what do we have? We have nothing. If we keep Josh, okay, we have one side of the field shut down, and we can kind of fill in pieces on the other side.
Yeah, it's just.
And they let him walk, and now they have been just, trying to figure it out and running uphill and not really working anything out. So I think it's a 5-6 win team. I do. I'm right there with you, man. Right there with you.
I definitely have him at 6 there. So let's go to the Saints next.
Okay.
I love Drew Brees.
You have to.
He's been so good for so long. I really liked him when he came into the league on the Chargers, when the Saints picked him up. He obviously won a Super Bowl there. He's been so great for so long, and he's so consistent. I just have a huge respect for him.
You have to.
I'm fascinated at the huge group of talented running backs they put together.
Right.
Mark Ingram coming off his best season.
Yeah.
I really liked what he did last year. They added Adrian Peterson, one of the best running backs ever. And regardless, whether he produces well or not, that's a great chance to take, because if he doesn't, they've still got Mark Ingram. He's still a very good, solid running back. And they drafted Alvin Kamara. He's done some good things in the preseason. He seems like
he had a really long run the other night. I don't know if you saw that.
He did.
50-yard run.
Yeah. So he can be an exciting player. So they've got a strong group of running backs there, and they always use them a lot in the passing game. They'll get a lot of action. So I'm excited for that running back position. I think there will be a lot of production. It might be difficult if you're playing fantasy football, deciding who's going to really do well there. I'm a big fan of Mark Ingram. I feel like he's undervalued, so I have him on every one of my teams I've drafted so far, which is only 2. But I do like him. I had him last year. He was very, very solid, even though he had that one game where I think it was Tim Hightower just took off and went crazy.
Yep, Tim Hightower. Yep.
But for the most part, he was very reliable, very good running back throughout the season. And then their receivers. One of my favorites for this year is Willie Snead. I think he's going to pick up a lot of the action they lost from trading Brandon Cooks, but they've still got a good group with Michael Thomas. Ted Ginn's going to be the speed guy, getting some long passes. not very consistent, but he'll have some explosive plays. And then I think Snead's going to get a lot of action, a lot of receptions. If you're in some kind of PPR league for fantasy, I love him for that. He's another. I have him on every single one of my 2 fantasy teams.
It's funny. I actually have his counterpart, Michael Thomas, on 2 of my 3 fantasy teams. So I'm really high on Michael Thomas. Funny story, real quick. So last year, I had to scrounge together a roster on Sunday morning because I forget the player, but he goes out with an injury. He's not going to play that day. He was questionable. They weren't sure. Schefter tweets out he's not playing. So I have to scramble and pick up a guy to replace him with. I picked up Michael Thomas. And then he just went off the rest of the year. So I mean, dude, that was successful. Yeah. So their receivers are definitely fantastic.
Yeah, he had a very good season last year. He's a guy I would love for fantasy football. I just have never been in a position where he's available and I can draft him. And I just would love to have him on my team. It hasn't worked out so far.
I actually got him in the last draft I did, which was Sunday. I actually got Michael Thomas and Drew Brees.
Oh, I always love that, having a combination like that, because that's where the comebacks happen. Yes. I had the opposite of that one year, that I was the top team and there was another team that was right there with me, and it was always, he would have Darren Sproles and Drew Brees, I believe it was, and it was just like anytime they'd combine for a passing touchdown, it was just destroyed me. Yep. I'd feel good being up by 50 points, and all of a sudden they're just piling on.
Exactly.
So I like that. It's always great to have, because they play a lot of Monday night and Sunday night games where you get to watch that being down and making a comeback as they stack their stats throughout the game.
So what do you got the Saints going as this year?
I have them at 9-7. They were 7-9 last year. Yeah. I think they'll be a little bit better with that running game. The defense is still suspect, but this division, I think it's going to be tight, similar to what we talked about the NFC North, and nobody really standing out a lot.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah, I think 9-7's a good number for the Saints, just because the defense over the years has been so lackluster, and it's hard to give this team 11, 12 wins with that defense. So,
their offense is going to produce.
Correct.
That's what I love about them.
Right. I don't think they're going to miss Brandon Cooks all that much. He didn't really have a very good year last year. Michael Thomas kind of, turned into be the guy, and now, you bring Ted Ginn, who can be the deep threat that Cooks was, with Steve getting kind of more of the underneath stuff. So, I like what they did in the backfield. Defense, though, like I said, is a concern. But as long as they got Drew Brees, they're going to put up numbers. They're going to score points. Brees is just ridiculous what he's doing. I think in the last, I forget the stat I heard. I think it's in the last 6 or 7 years, he hasn't finished lower than 4th in fantasy quarterback numbers to end the year.
I wouldn't doubt it. He's always at the top.
He's always at the top. So, the Saints, man, if they could just, they just, get some sort of defense. Go out there and, just invest 1 or 2 years, worth of draft picks and free agents on defense. If I'm Drew Brees, I'm kind of pissed. He won a Super Bowl, right? But the talent they had on offense, you think they could have won some more, or at least contended for another one. But
yeah, they just, I feel like they have done some investing in defensive players, but it just hasn't turned out well for them.
Lattimore,
yeah, they just drafted him,
which is a good pickup at Ohio State. Yep.
And that's the 11th overall pick there, so hopefully he can do something for him.
Yeah, maybe they're moving in the right direction. Let's get the defense kind of picked up here and go from there.
So we'll see. And then the next team, I have them at the top of the division. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jameis Winston has been very good at such a young age here. So I expect him to continue doing that. They just filled him in with all kinds of weapons around him. So I'm very, very excited about what they have there with Mike Evans. They added Deshaun Jackson. Adam Humphries has been a solid kind of guy that he'll be fine. And then at tight end, they've got Cameron Brate back. Tight ends, you rarely see them really produce. So they drafted O.J. Howard really high, but it's very hard for them to produce as a rookie. So I think he'll have some plays, probably catch some touchdowns, but he won't be a consistent factor. I really love what they've done there with the offense they've put together. The only thing that's going to really hold them back, especially early on offense, is going to be missing Doug Martin. Yeah. Everything I was reading all summer long was he's in the best shape of his life. He looks fantastic. He's ready to go. He's more mentally there. He was saying something like that than he has been the rest of his career. He's going to miss the first 3 games where they'll have some combination of Jaquiz Rodgers and Charles Sims playing. Yep. Both of those guys were productive when they played when Martin got hurt last year. So I don't think it's going to affect them a significant amount. Probably a little bit early on there, but I'm still very, very excited about this team.
Love Tampa Bay as well, dude. I was actually on another one of my friend's podcasts a few months back. He asked me to come on and kind of break down some fantasy guys, and my biggest sleeper / get guy that you have to get this year is Jameis Winston. I think this guy is really going to take a big step forward this year. Go back to last year, he actually led all NFL quarterbacks with his average pass attempt was 10.9 yards down the field. And you have to think that's going to probably stay the same, if not go up, with Deshaun Jackson being there. O.J. Howard, a tight end who is athletic and get down the seam and go vertically as well. Offensively, they're stacked. I mean, really, there's no reason for this team not to score points week in and week out. I mean, there's no reason this team can't turn into a Saints team, a Falcons team, a Packers team as far as offenses go. Defensively, too, they're doing it the right way as well. I mean, they have some talented guys there. I mean, they bring Brent Grimes in, a cornerback, to kind of fill in there. Gerald McCoy, who is one of my favorite players as far as football players. Plus, he's also one of my favorite, people in the NFL. I don't know if you watch the show Hard Knocks.
That's
Zach,
not something I've gotten into.
On HBO. You should, do, because it's fantastic. I'm fascinated by it. I watch it every year, and he's a mainstay on the show so far this season, and he's hilarious. He's awesome. Very family-oriented, good personality, good sense of humor. Awesome guy. So with the front 4 there, he anchors that, and then their linebackers are good with Quan Alexander and Levante David, who are fantastic. So I like what they're doing. It's funny because knowing we were going to do this show tonight, I was between Tampa Bay and Atlanta was a toss-up for me, a really big toss-up. So
not for me.
So I know it's not for you. It's tough. I'm gonna take Tampa because I'm gonna go with Tampa. I'm gonna say they win 11 games, but they win the tiebreaker over Atlanta. That's where I think it stays. I'm not going to give them 12 wins. I'll give them 11, but they win the division via the tiebreaker over Atlanta. So I'm going to give them 11 wins and say Tampa takes a step forward. Very similar to Tennessee, an AFC team that I think takes a step forward and wins their division, like we talked about in the first podcast. So how many wins do you have them getting then?
I have them at 10-6.
10. Okay.
I think they'll be slightly ahead of the Saints there at 9-7. So I was very curious how you'd feel about the Bucks.
Yeah.
So I'm very intrigued that we're both high on them.
I just really like their offense is great too, but I really like what they have defensively, man. I don't think a lot of people are, because everyone this offseason has been talking about Winston and the acquisition of Jackson and O.J. Howard, and you got Mike Evans there, who he's one of my favorite receivers in the league. And
he's been fantastic.
But defensively, I mean, they're just so good. So I really like the way they're putting things together in Tampa Bay, and they're going to be good going forward for a while.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of our NFC breakdown. Once again, we had a lot of content we went through as we talked about all the different teams within the NFC. So we broke it down into 2 parts. The next part coming up, look out for that, where we discuss all of the remaining NFC teams, including discussing Eddie Lacy's weight bonuses, talking about our favorite bad team that could pull some upsets, and a full breakdown of the NFC East, which contains each of our favorite teams. So we have some good, entertaining back and forth and some strong disagreements within that section. It should be a great time. We'll have that up very shortly, and thank you so much for listening.